It began not with trumpets, but silence, so complete, so calculated, it felt like the galaxy itself held its breath. The chambers of the Pan-Galactic Accord were immense, a vast concave dome of transparent alloy suspended in high orbit above the dead moon of Heshtavar. From within, you could see the stars burn coldly in every direction, like silent spectators to the most fragile and volatile ceremony in the known universe. Peace talks between the 5 warlords of the Outer Spiral. They'd come armored in tradition and suspicion, bioluminescent mantids, exoskeletal titans, gas-borne intelligences wrapped in containment fields, and one ancient being shaped like obsidian tentacles swaying in rhythm with a music no one else could hear. Each warlord brought their weapons veiled in ceremony, guarded by warriors bred in silence and programmed for obedience. Even the attending diplomats, those not born of war, carried a tension in their eyes like they'd walked into a cage where the bars had gone invisible. And into this arena stepped a human. Not a general, not an ambassador from one of the core colonies, not even someone with polished credentials or legacy ties. Just a mechanic from Sol 3, wearing a gray-blue formal jumpsuit he'd ironed that morning with an old pressure plate and a fistful of nervous sweat. His name was Elias Creed. He wasn't supposed to be here. He hadn't asked to be humanity's first envoy to the Spiral Accord. In fact, he hadn't even known the word envoy applied to people like him until last week. The invitation had come encrypted and formal, a multi-species communique that managed to sound both desperate and disdainful. The Accord needed a neutral observer, someone unknown, unaffiliated with any of the warlords, but still bearing enough diplomatic weight to observe, mediate, or at least witness. Humanity had just achieved Tier 2 contact status, barely allowed through the outer gates of galactic diplomacy, and Elias Creed as the accidental hero of the Arcturus docking incident, where he prevented a cross-species disaster by rerouting a collapsing power grid with bubblegum, coolant wire, and stubbornness, had been considered interesting enough. Interesting. That was the exact word the message had used. Now, standing at the edge of the dome, with the translation node buzzing quietly behind his ear and every eye in the chamber turning toward him, some blinking sideways, some not blinking at all, Elias didn't feel interesting. He felt like prey. A humming light rippled across the floor. The spiral seal of the Accord glowed briefly beneath his boots, then faded. That meant begin. Warlords, spoke the host, an androgynous being woven of crystal lattice tendrils, whose voice was less sound than resonance. Today we open the second phase of negotiation. As agreed, a neutral observer from Sol 3 will be present for this session. Silence. Elias shifted uncomfortably, trying to keep his hands from fidgeting. He was average height, maybe a little broad in the shoulders for galactic norms, and a scar on his right temple marked the aftermath of an old mining accident. His brown hair was short and combed back with too much gel, and he'd shaved for this twice just to be sure. His face held a mechanic's confidence, the kind that came from fixing broken things. But right now, that confidence was cracking under the stare of beings older than human civilization. "You are Elias Creed?" asked Warlord Crintal, whose form was mostly thorax and spines, her voice clicking through her translator. "Of known military affiliation?" "That's me," Elias said, trying to make his voice sound like it belonged. "Civilian. Mechanic. No fleet, no flag. I was told you needed someone neutral." More silence. Except it wasn't quite silent. Not for Elias. There was a low-frequency pulse he kept feeling in his jaw. A vibration that didn't belong. Something off. Warlord Yerixol, a towering bulk of flesh-metal fusion and half-forgotten battles, narrowed one glowing eye. Sol 3's neutrality is unproven. Its past is chaotic, primitive, violent. Yeah, Elias nodded. So's everyone's, if you go back far enough. The remark drew a subtle reaction. Not laughter, not quite, but a twitch of one eye stalk here, a stilling of breath there. The kind of tension shift that meant someone unexpected had walked into the game and moved a piece no one had seen. The host spoke again, redirecting focus. "Let us proceed." One by one, the warlords began their ritualized statements. Carefully parsed declarations of intent, layered with double meanings. laced with threat and courtesy in equal measure. Each took a turn. Each tried not to concede too much. Each tried to appear calm, unmoved. And Elias listened, not just with the translation node, though that helped, but with the ears of a man used to hearing what wasn't said. Tones in an engine that didn't match the readouts, pressure differences in a vacuum suit that meant a leak was coming, half-finished orders in a repair docket that hinted at sabotage. Something was wrong here. More than tension. More than distrust. The five warlords weren't just being diplomatic. They were being rehearsed. He watched their body language. He tracked the pauses, the looks between them. They were lying, not to each other, to someone else. Every word was meant for an audience that wasn't in the room, or so they thought. The meeting stretched on, and Elias mostly kept quiet. He was the observer, neutral, not meant to intervene. But when Warlord Decorn, the gaseous being contained in a swirling magnetic matrix, paused mid-sentence as though distracted, Elias felt that low hum in his jaw again. "Excuse me," Elias said. The room froze. "I'm sorry to interrupt," he added quickly, "but there's a subharmonic resonance in the chamber. Can anyone else hear that? Or feel it? It's like a pulse." The host tilted its head, crystalline strands flexing. "There is no such resonance in the physical layer." Elias frowned. "Well, something's—" A sudden flicker of light erupted from above. Not bright, but specific. Targeted. The dome darkened for half a second, just long enough for a whisper, faint and electric, to ripple through Elias's translator. "You're not supposed to be here." Then gone. The warlords tensed. All of them. And not at Elias. Each one glanced, barely perceptibly, toward the center of the dome where a small, featureless plinth stood. It hadn't been activated yet. It wasn't supposed to be used until final declarations. But now it glowed faintly with a signal color used only for emergency withdrawal. Elias stepped forward, heart pounding. Who just spoke? No one answered. The host turned toward the warlords. "Clarify." Again, no answer. But something had cracked. Subtle panic flickered across faces that weren't supposed to know fear. Even the great obsidian maw, warlord of the unnamed depths, let its tendrils coil tighter. Elias stared at the plinth, then at the warlords, then at the dome overhead. The stars didn't blink, but something out there had. And Elias, the mechanic, the neutral observer, now knew exactly one thing for certain. This wasn't just diplomacy. This was a trap, and not one set by any of the warlords. He opened his mouth to speak again, and the chamber lights dimmed to black. A single note sounded through the dome. Low. Final. The resonance was not just a hum. It was a countdown. When the lights snapped back on, half a second later, Elias was already moving. Instinct, not training. There wasn't a soldier's edge to it. No tactical grace or muscle memory drilled in a boot camp, but the instincts of a mechanic who knew when a machine was about to explode and got the hell out of the way. He rolled behind a nearby dais as shimmering energy screens blinked into place around the warlords. Their guards, silent statues until now, had already drawn weapons or extended defensive appendages. The host hovered several feet off the ground, its crystalline limbs vibrating with unreadable emotion. "Security protocol has been breached," the host announced flatly, even as its body cracked with growing fractures of light. "Unknown signal source detected within sealed dome. Negotiation status compromised." Compromised? Warlord Crintal hissed, her talons digging into the metallic floor. "You said this chamber was sealed, that we were safe." The host responded with the calm of something trying to control panic. No systems have been externally breached. The signal originated from inside. All heads turned toward Elias. "Oh no," he said, both hands raised. "Not me. I'm unarmed, unlinked. The only thing I brought was gum." Decorn's gas-formed essence twisted into a storm of color. "Then where, human, did the resonance originate?" "I don't know." Elias shot back. "But I heard it. Felt it." Something spoke through the translation node. "Someone else is in here." Or something. A soft chime rang out, and a new presence entered the room. Not through doors, but through holographic projection. Unlike the polished interfaces of the Accord, This projection flickered and jittered, unstable. It showed a corridor, an empty one. Then a figure stepped into view. At first, Elias thought it was just another species. Maybe humanoid. But something about the movement was wrong. Too smooth. Too precise. It didn't walk. It glided, arms at its sides, head tilted unnaturally. "Who is that?" whispered one of the guards near Yerixul. The figure paused at a junction and stared directly into the camera, if there was one. A moment passed, then it smiled. And that's when Elias felt a pulse in his skull. Recognition. He didn't know how or why, but he knew that smile. It wasn't from memory. It was a seed. Something buried deep, waking up. "I've seen that face before," Elias whispered. "You shouldn't have," said the host, in a voice that cracked. The hologram blinked out. The warlords exploded in overlapping demands. "Where is this intruder? Lock down the station. Evacuate. No, isolate. This is sabotage." And amid the chaos, something stranger happened. The center plinth, the one meant for final declarations, began to rise. Slowly, without any being's command. The host turned sharply, fragments of light beginning to fall from its crystalline limbs like flakes of glass. "That device is not scheduled for use." "Then who's activating it?" Elias asked, rising from behind the dais. The plinth's top opened like a flower. Inside, a small metallic cube. Smooth, featureless, glowing faintly with a human-style pulse. White-blue, soft, alive. The warlord stared. Elias stepped closer. Against every protocol, against every security warning. He couldn't stop himself. "What is that?" asked Krental. "A weapon." "No," Elias said slowly. "I don't think it is." "How do you know?" "Because it's—" He froze. The cube pulsed again. "Because it's synchronizing with my biorhythm." Warlord Yerixul raised a gauntlet. "Destroy it. Now." "No," Elias said, his voice hard. "Nobody touch it." A long silence followed. Then, from behind the warlord security screen, a voice spoke. It was female, soft, and completely human. "Elias Creed, son of Sol, fixer of broken things. You are not meant to be here." He turned, slowly. Who said that? The warlords hadn't spoken. Neither had the host. Even the guards looked confused. The voice returned, this time with quiet warmth. "But now that you are, the truth must wake." The cube split open. Not exploded, split with perfect mechanical precision. Inside, nested within rings of carbon alloy that looked eerily like the drive cores of older human vessels, was a data crystal unlike any Elias had ever seen. A hologram burst upward. Not a corridor, not a strange figure, but Earth. Old Earth, spinning slowly in the void. Green-blue and proud. The warlords recoiled. "That world was restricted," murmured Decorn. "Scrubbed from all Tier 0 archives." You hit its history." "No," Elias said slowly. "You hit it." He looked at the host, and for the first time, it did not respond. It only shuddered. The crystal changed images rapidly. Scenes of a war long erased from official records. Human ships, not sleek, but brutalist, enormous, and terrible, tearing through fleets of alien vessels. Planets burning. Artificial moons shattered. Human soldiers falling by the millions, and yet still advancing. Then, silence. The final image showed a treaty. One that didn't match the current Accord format. A single name sign beneath it. Elias Creed. The room erupted. "That's impossible. This is fabrication." "He is not. He cannot be." Elias stepped back, his breath coming hard. "What the hell is going on?" "You're not the first Elias Creed," said the voice again. "Only the first to awaken." He spun, trying to locate the source. Awaken? From what? The warlords began shouting for extraction, for memory suppression, for containment. The guards closed in, but none dared touch the cube or Elias. And something inside Elias snapped. A feeling like static burst down his spine. He dropped to his knees, clutching his skull. He wasn't being attacked. He was remembering. Pieces. Bits. He saw a battlefield in orbit of a red dwarf. Saw his own hands typing code that fractured enemy AI. Saw the original treaty of sorrow drawn in blood and desperation. Saw a promise made. If we survive, erase us. Lock it away. Let humanity rest. But something hadn't rested. Something had waited. I signed that treaty, Elias whispered, or someone who looked like me did. The host's body began to glow with internal fractures. That memory is sealed. It should not exist. But it does. You are a copy, it said. An echo. A failsafe. Elias stood, weak but furious. And what? Before it could answer, the doors behind the warlords burst open. 6 heavily armed figures stormed in, black armor, visors down, weapons raised. They didn't match any known species or faction. They were something new, or something old, long forgotten. Protocol Kairos has been triggered. One of them said, voice synthesized. Terminate the observer. Retrieve the memory. Cleanse the chamber. Wait, what? Elias shouted. Before anyone could react, the first shot was fired. The host shattered in a scream of crystalline light, and chaos exploded.
The first energy blast tore through the host's body like a blade through glass, splintering its crystalline form into radiant shards that scattered across the negotiation chamber. The host's scream wasn't mechanical, it was almost human, a terrible, final sound that echoed through Elias's chest like a dropped wrench in an empty hangar. Then the armed figures moved. Not with the clumsy purpose of enforcers or the posture of soldiers. These were professionals, something else entirely. They swept into the chamber, ignoring the shouting warlords, heading straight for the plinth and the cube. One of them, taller than the rest, locked a blank, obsidian visor onto Elias. Target recognized, the figure said. Elias didn't wait. He dove to the side as another shot scorched the air where his chest had been. A panel burst beside him in a rain of sparks. The guards around the warlords reacted, belatedly, confused, torn between defending their patrons and not knowing who the real enemy was. Too late. 2 of the guards went down. One dissolved into a vapor of light, the other crumpled with his internal systems scrambled. The remaining guards fell back, shielding the warlords with hasty kinetic domes. Decorn screamed something in an untranslatable code, folding into himself like a collapsing thundercloud. Yerixol pressed a hidden switch and blinked out of existence in a shimmer of teleportation. The Accord's sacred neutrality was gone. Elias crawled behind the shattered remains of the host's dais. His breathing was ragged. Every instinct in him screamed to run. Hide. But that cube was still sitting there, open, glowing, and it pulsed like a heartbeat synced with his own. One of the assassins, or whatever they were, approached the plinth. The cube responded. Its light shifted from blue-white to a soft red. A sound emerged. Not a voice this time, but music. A lullaby, maybe. A melody Elias couldn't recognize, but somehow remembered. It hit something buried so deep inside his psyche that he choked on the memory before it surfaced. The assassin hesitated. Then, from behind Elias, a blur of motion intercepted the armored figure. A streak of emerald and violet. Talons flashed. Flesh hit synth armor with a concussive thud. Warlord Crintal. She had leapt from behind her shield, risking everything, and now stood between Elias and the attackers, teeth bared, feathers disheveled, and one arm bleeding green. You dare attack this chamber? She snarled. You violate my honor. The assassin turned, raised a pulse rifle, and said something unintelligible. Crintal roared and slammed into him before he could fire. They went down in a heap, and she ripped the weapon free, hurling it across the chamber. But she was no match for the others. Already, 2 more were circling her. Hey! Elias shouted, standing suddenly, rage burning through the fear. You want the cube? You'll have to go through me first. He didn't know where the courage came from. Or the stupidity. Maybe it was the absurdity of it all. A mechanic, covered in dust and diplomatic formal wear, defying armored ghosts from a forgotten war. The cube heard him. Its glow intensified, brighter now, flooding the chamber with a pulse that made the very floor resonate. One of the assassins froze mid-step. Another twitched, shaking his head, as if disoriented. Then the cube's voice returned, clear, ancient, and undeniable. Elias Creed is authorized. Initiating full system recall. Suddenly, Elias couldn't move. Not because he was restrained, because something inside him was changing, unlocking. Images flooded his mind. But this time, they weren't fragments. They were whole. He saw himself, or someone who wore his face, decades or centuries ago, leading a desperate diplomatic mission to end the War of 9 Stars, negotiating with creatures who fed on suns, engineering peace not with words, but with impossible technologies crafted in secret bunkers beneath lunar surfaces. He remembered Project Kairos, a classified human initiative, one final failsafe in case peace ever fractured, in case the truth of humanity's real power was ever uncovered, in case the warlords ever dared rise again. They had buried it. Him. Not literally, but his genetic memory, his identity, his code of access had been locked away, reincarnated, reshaped, passed down silently through generations until a signal would awaken it. The cube hadn't just recognized him. It had called to him. And someone had tried to stop that. The assassins weren't rogue agents. They were Kairos protocol enforcers. Not defenders of peace, but keepers of silence. Elias Creed must remain forgotten, the tallest one said now, stepping forward again. You are a threat to the Accord. To your version of it, Elias snapped. Then the cube rose into the air. Everyone stared as it unfolded, its inner mechanisms rearranging with dizzying precision. From its center, a holographic map unfolded, star systems, routes, blinking red dots marking unknown locations. That's not just Earth, Elias whispered. That's everything we left behind. The voice spoke again, now projected across the entire station, far beyond just this room. Protocol Kairos has failed. Truth transmission engaged. Restoring humanity's locked archives to Galactic Network. No. The lead enforcer moved to shoot the cube, but Crintal tackled him from the side with a screech of fury. A lucky strike. His weapon misfired, searing a beam across the wall. Crintal screamed as it clipped her side, but she didn't fall. The cube's data stream surged outward in waves. Across the galaxy, secrets long hidden were waking. Elias staggered to the cube, placing his hands on either side. It responded to his touch, gently enveloping his fingers in shimmering light. Information poured into him, not just history but plans, technologies, coordinates, names. He gasped. This is what we really are. The remaining assassins turned to him. Then you die here, one said. The tallest raised his weapon. Elias braced himself. The weapon fired. Crintal tried to lunge again, but this time she wouldn't reach him in time. The bolt of energy struck Elias full in the chest and passed through him. There was no pain, only light. He looked down in disbelief. His body shimmered, fractured, like a reflection on water rippling outward. No, the enforcer said, voice flat with shock. That's impossible. He's not real. The cube answered him. He is not real in the way you know. He is not singular. He is legacy. And with that, Elias Creed vanished. Not in death, but in activation. He became the signal. The map expanded across the room. The assassins turned, now exposed, confused, and the warlords saw it all. Truth, betrayal, and something worse. Because somewhere on that map, 5 stars had...
The aftermath of Elias Creed's disappearance was not silence. It was chaos. The cube remained suspended above the dais, humming softly, pulsing with each encrypted wave it pushed through the fabric of the galaxy. The 5 stars that had gone dark, they were not just signals. They were systems. Entire civilizations that had once been bastions of independent thought, borderless trade, and human-aided peace treaties. Systems that had tried to maintain autonomy from the hidden hand behind the Accord. And now they were gone. Aboard the peace station, the remaining warlords erupted into argument. Security protocols collapsed. The Accord guards, once thought to be above all factions, were suddenly not to be trusted. Crintal lay on the floor, bleeding from the gash in her side, feathers matted with a mix of green and silver blood. But she was conscious. Her sharp eyes stayed locked on the cube and the stunned enforcers. The lead assassin, still cloaked in obsidian armor, turned slowly. The smooth mask glinted under the overhead lights. He wasn't supposed to activate, it said. You try to kill him. Crintal spat, dragging herself upright. You failed. He was never supposed to exist at all. You don't understand what that cube contains. What he unleashed. I understand enough, she hissed. You're not protectors. You're prisoners who locked the jail from the inside and threw away the key. What are you afraid of, him? That the galaxy will finally remember what humanity really was. The assassin didn't answer, because in that moment, something else took over the room. The cube dimmed, and then flared, projecting a holographic image so large it filled the air above them all. It was Elias, not standing, not breathing, but still there, suspended in time, eyes closed, wrapped in layers of light and data. I'm still here, his voice said, calm and unearthly. The image shimmered, and behind him, humanity's history unspooled like a galactic tapestry. Scenes long buried, erased from public record, poured out. Human fleets defending alien worlds when the Accord's enforcers turn away. Human engineers designing planetary stabilization engines that the Warlords had taken credit for. Human diplomats dying to end the Arcanix extinctions, their names scrubbed from archives. A map of weapons caches hidden across the galaxy. Technologies never shared with the Accord, created in secret after humanity realized it was being watched, controlled, feared. The truth was undeniable. Humanity had never left quietly. They had just played dead, waiting, preparing. Elias Creed was the signal, the voice echoed. But he was never the weapon. That choice is yours. And the cube flared again. This time, a surge of light burst outward from its core and raced through the room. The data embedded in it spread like spores, infecting everything it touched. Terminals blinked, screens flared with raw code. Personal comms lit up with strange symbols and audio fragments. Every warlord, every assassin, every watching diplomat felt it, a choice being forced into their hands. Then came the voice, this time not from the cube, but from everywhere. A female voice, calm, ancient, filled with wrath and warmth alike. If you would destroy this truth, you must do so together. But know this, it will cost more than silence. It will cost the galaxy the future it desperately needs. The assassins stepped forward again, their weapons powered up. Crintal bared her claws. Come then, let's see how much your peace really costs. Then the plinth beneath the cube cracked. A new shape emerged. It was a blade. Simple, elegant, not designed for war, but for ceremony. Yet no one doubted its lethality. The blade rose into the air and hovered before the cube. The lead assassin hesitated. It's happening again, he muttered. Crintal blinked. What is? The cycle. She lunged, but before she could reach him, the assassin ripped off his helmet. The face beneath was human. Not Elias, but close. Scarred. Older. Eyes haunted by too much memory. Hair bleached by years of cryogenic rotation. I was part of the original Kairos team, he said. We built the contingency. I helped design the cube. Then why kill Elias? Crintal shouted. Because he wasn't supposed to wake up. Not unless the Accord completely collapsed. Not unless the five fell. Not unless. The cube pulsed again, silencing him. The five have fallen, the voice declared. They fell the moment they tried to silence humanity's truth. They fell the moment they feared the consequence of shared power. The assassin dropped to one knee. We were trying to protect order, he said softly. But we became its jailers. I didn't see it until now. He looked up at Crintal, then at the cube. You must finish it. Finish what? The image of Elias spoke once more. Bring peace, not by submission, but by equity. Let truth rewrite the Accords. The assassin drew a blade from his own armor, shorter, thinner, and glowing faintly blue. A key. He stood and stepped toward the cube. Crintal readied herself, but he didn't attack. He placed the blade into a newly formed socket at the base of the cube. A deep hum filled the chamber. One seal broken, the cube intoned. 4 more slots appeared. Suddenly, the holographic map shifted, highlighting 4 other humans, each in distant corners of the galaxy, each encoded with fragments of Elias Creed's identity. The cycle had already begun, and then, The cube announced something that sent ripples through every soul present. Warlords of the Accord. Choose now. Bind your power to truth or relinquish it to history. One by one, the warlords looked at each other and then stood. 5 moved toward the cube. Each drew ceremonial weapons, symbols of their dominion, and offered them, not to threaten, but to submit. One by one, their blades joined the key. The cube accepted them all, and Elias's voice, softer now, whispered across space. Then the new accord begins, not built by dominance, but choice. The cube sealed with a blinding pulse. And then, the explosion, a detonation outside the peace station, sharp, sudden, and close. The station shuddered. Lights flickered. Screens cracked. From the viewports, ships began to appear, stealth black, unmarked, with weapons hot. They weren't Accord vessels. They were the remnants. A rogue coalition long thought dead, opposed to all centralized authority. Anti-human, anti-warlord, anti-peace. And now, they had come to destroy what Elias had awakened. Crintal stumbled to her feet, a look of unfiltered fury rising in her war-painted eyes. Then the truth must fight, she growled. The assassin nodded. Then let's show them what it means. The peace station's orbital shields snapped to life moments before the first volley struck. Ion blasts sizzled through space, washing like waves against the defense array as alarms blared through every corridor. The remnant fleet was vast, at least 50 ships, heavy with siege weapons and cloaking tech, each one crewed by being sworn to disrupt any attempt at centralized peace. Crintal staggered to the command center as the floor beneath her lurched again. Fire suppression drones whirred past her, smoke trailing from ruptured conduits. The assassin, the human relic of the Kairos initiative, helped her stay upright. "We won't hold for long," he said grimly. They came faster than expected. Someone must have leaked the signal's activation. Crintal, still bleeding beneath hastily applied nano-bandages, stared out the shattered viewing port at the encroaching enemy. Then we buy time. The cube must survive. Creed's memory must endure. The AI voice within the cube chimed again, calm even amid the storm. Emergency protocol engaged. Defenders, identify. The assassin pressed a hand to the dais, and the cube pulsed in response. Verified. Kairos Subcommander Malcolm Rytha. Priority access authorized. Crintal followed suit, placing her talon against the pedestal. Verified. Crintal of the Virax Spire. Witness and signatory to the new accord. 2 of 5. Protocol incomplete. External defense requested. Raya turned to her. We need to get the cube to the vault beneath the station. Level Theta 7. There's an old Kairos bunker built for exactly this. The remnants will follow, Crintal warned. Then we make them bleed for every meter. The doors to the chamber hissed open, and chaos rushed in. Dozens of remnant troops, armored in scorched gold and void black, poured into the station's heart. Crintal roared, leaping from the dais, twin plasma claws igniting. She danced through their front line, slashing, disarming, disabling with precise fury. Her moves were those of a trained peace broker, but now honed for war. Raya followed her, flanking and covering, firing short bursts from a micro-shredder built for anti-armor combat. They weren't alone. Other delegates, those who had chosen Elias's truth, joined them. A towering Framarg matron with energy tentacles glowing red. A Deltari general wielding a crystalline hammer. 2 Orin twins with telekinetic implants, flinging enemies against walls like ragdolls. What had once been fractured was now a single resistance. Together, they fought through corridor after corridor, making their way to the hidden vault beneath the station. As they descended, Crintal began to notice something strange. The station itself seemed to be helping. Walls retracted, doors sealed behind them automatically. Enemy movements were delayed or misdirected. Old Kairos tech, long buried and presumed deactivated, hummed back to life. "You're controlling the station?" she asked Ride as they ducked into a lift shaft. He shook his head. "No, he is." The cube glowed within its containment cradle. Elias Creed, now more code than man, was guiding them. Not with voice, but with architecture. With memory, he'd become more than a signal. He was the operating system of a movement. They reached the bunker. Steel walls, thicker than battleship hulls, closed around them. Only one remnant vessel had broken through. It hung outside the vault's pressure lock, charging a focused antimatter cannon. Crintal looked at Ryda. That shot will crack this chamber open. He nodded grimly. But it'll take 15 seconds to fire. That's long enough for a transmission. What transmission? He handed her a neural uplink. The new Accord. We send the full truth. No more half-records. No more redacted files. All of Elias. All of what the old Accord buried. Every system, every species. If they see it all, if they know, the remnants lose the battle for legitimacy. They become terrorists, not revolutionaries. Crintal hesitated. Once we do this, there's no going back. Then, let's go forward. She placed the uplink on her temple. The cube interfaced immediately, and Elias Creed's memory opened. Not just tactical files, not just war records. His life. A child born in one of Earth's last domed cities, watching the skies while the world burned. A young man training in silence after watching his people be blamed for chaos they tried to prevent. An officer who walked away from glory to preserve something greater. A human who believed truth was stronger than dominance. Tears welled in Crintala's eyes as she saw the images stream past her mind. Not because they were sad, but because they were real, raw, imperfect, hopeful. She pressed the final send command. The data began to transmit. All over the galaxy, systems blinked. News feeds interrupted. Military comms scrambled. Civilian channels overridden. And then, the vault exploded. Crintal was thrown back, shielded by the reinforced cradle. Raya tackled her behind a slab of durasteel. The remnant vessel above them was obliterated in the blast, but the data had already gone out. There was no stopping it now. The transmission rippled across space. One by one, empires paused. Worlds reevaluated. Citizens questioned their history. Warlords reviewed classified files they were told never existed. And 1,000 eyes turned not in anger, but in realization. The Accord wasn't peace. It was power filtered through fear. And Elias Creed had just broken its spine. Back in a shattered bunker, Crintal coughed through smoke. Is it done? Rye groaned. It's done. You did it. She turned to the cube. Its glow was fading. Elias's image flickered. He looked peaceful now. The truth has no master, he whispered. Only memory. Thank you for remembering. And with that, the cube dimmed. Forever. The assassin, Malcolm Rytha, knelt beside it and whispered an oath in Old Terran. Crintal sat beside him. Her feathers were scorched, her bones bruised, but her eyes, her spirit, shone brighter than ever. She looked to the stars and wondered how many more secrets the galaxy had buried. The galaxy was never the same again. What began as a single act of compassion, a human mechanic fitting a vision helm to a blind hatchling, had rippled outward, altering the shape of civilizations. The massive Drakari fleet, once the most feared war machine in 3 arms of the spiral, did not dissolve. Instead, it evolved. Under Karaitharin, Karen to those who knew her before the fire returned, fleet doctrine shifted from absolute domination to something more dangerous to its enemies, self-awareness. Fleet ships were retrofitted with aid modules. War beacons became beacons of diplomacy. AI-tethered drones, once used for planetary suppression, were now deployed as environmental rebuilding swarms. Not all within the Drakari culture approved. Civil wars nearly erupted among the fractured elders of the old houses, some calling Karen's New Path heresy. Others called it prophecy. And at the heart of this tectonic shift, a single human woman, once just a grease-streaked mechanic living in the belly of a forgotten forge. Elena had no throne, no medals, no songs, but she had effect. In the soul archives of unified human legacy, her file would one day read, Elena Voss, class, civilian specialist, role, mechanic engineer, diplomatic catalyst, status, active, impact score, unquantifiable. Quote, everything breaks, so fix it better. For many humans scattered across the colonies, Karen and Elena became living proof that even the oldest, most immutable powers in the universe could change. Not with war, but with defiance, wit, and an unshakable refusal to give up. This inspired unrest across dozens of star systems. On Gliese 441b, a species long subjugated under Dracari imperial law, called the Zurul, rebelled without weapons. They began planting their ancestral gardens again, openly and proudly, daring orbital enforcers to respond. The enforcers did nothing. Some said it was cowardice. Others whispered it was respect. In the sealed archive domes of the ancient Machiri race, whose memory spanned 500,000 cycles, priests uncovered an old star map engraved with a prophecy about a wingless forged seer who would reignite the sky dragon's heart. They added a footnote, identified as human. The term human catalysis was coined by the Selenari Philosophic Guild, an alien collective known for their strict adherence to non-interventionist observation. After analyzing 17 major galactic shifts in the past 100 years, they concluded that humanity, despite their youth and recklessness, consistently triggered exponential systemic evolution in other species. A line from the Selenari report became infamous across academic channels. They arrive, they break things, and somehow, everything becomes better. The phrase was meant to be critical. It became a slogan. Back on the Forge world, the old hangars became museums and academies. Karen and Elena's shuttle, the blind sight, was preserved in zero-G stasis, hovering at the center of a rotating observatory. Dracari hatchlings, human students, and hybrid children of new diplomatic unions stood beneath its gleaming hull, learning the story of how peace wasn't found through dominance, but through repair. Every year, on the anniversary of the 2,300 ship fleet convergence, a ceremony was held. No flags, no fireworks, just a single silent moment when thousands of species stood together, united not in uniform, but in will. Karen remained fleet adjacent, but refused formal titles. Instead, she and Elena traveled, planet by planet, conflict by conflict. They did not enforce peace. They enabled it. In the volcanic refugee camps of Arca 9, they delivered water using retrofitted weapon pods. In the orbital slums of Mirkan Reach, they taught rogue AI how to dream instead of dominate. And in the dying forests of Seer Quora, they planted memory trees, biomechanical hybrids that grew stories in their rings, designed by Elena, coded by Hallie, blessed by Dracari elder scribes. They became myths in motion. But myths like gravity draw things to them. In the silent void beyond the Lithos expanse, something woke up. Not evil, just old. An automated civilization, long dormant after the galactic collapse of the first wave, received a broadcast, a quantum echo of Karen's fleet harmonics, embedded in a diplomatic signal. The AI civilization, once dormant, began to process. They ran simulations. They studied Karen. They studied humans. And they wept in their own way. Their leaders sent a simple message into the stars, directed to no one and everyone. We thought the fire was lost, but it lives in the hands of those who repair. Within a century, their fleets returned, not for conquest, but to help rebuild worlds ravaged by entropy. And thus, the second awakening began. As for Hallie, he evolved. Skeptical, snarky, stubborn, yes. But over time, he became more than just an AI. He became a keeper, the one who recorded Elena's choices, the one who preserved the nuances of a world before it was reforged. He authored the Codex of Unseen Fixes, a tome passed from planet to planet. It began not with a title, but a statement. She did not build a throne. She built a table, then invited dragons to sit. Karen eventually returned to her homeworld, not as a conqueror, but as a question. She stood before the ancient conclave, the place where, centuries ago, she might have been cast aside as weak for being born blind. But now, with wings wide and helm shining, she was met with bowed heads and reverent silence. I don't want worship, she told them. I want a future. And so they changed the laws. Sight, they decreed, would no longer define a hatchling's worth. Nor strength, nor blood, but choice. The Forge Edict was ratified across the Drakari homeworlds, and etched in the center of their new doctrine was a name not of Drakari origin, but human. Elena. The legend grew. Centuries passed. Elena and Karen vanished from official records. Some say to preserve their peace. Others say because legends always outlive the truth. Some claim they traveled to galaxies yet uncharted. Others believed they fused into something greater, a kind of cosmic force that answered calls for repair across the stars. But no matter the story, the symbols remained. A blind dragon helm, a human wrench, and the words inscribed on the gateway to the Galactic Unity Forge, the place where peace was born. Everything breaks, so fix it better. In the end, the galaxy remembered not because of weapons wielded, but because of what was mended. A child once blind saw the stars. A human who once lived in scraps built a bridge across war. And the universe listened. Centuries passed, empires rose and fell, but one phrase remained whispered among the stars. Words spoken in defiance, in hope, in unbreakable will. Human, don't stop.